Welcome to Daily Armor. Today we're going to be in the book of Matthew. We're going to be looking at chapter 14. I want to look from verses 22 through 31, but I really want to focus on that word come in verse number 29. That's the word from the Lord. That's still kind of what I'm praying about, some different things, some different situations, and I really just don't know. And I'm asking for a word. And like I've mentioned before, I am looking at different scriptures where maybe that the Lord had a word for somebody and they had to choose whether to obey or not, or that they asked for a word. And here is Peter, and he asked for something, and he asked for something that was absolutely impossible. But let's look a little bit further. Peter is one of those that I can relate to. Peter is very known in his early walk with the Lord as being very impulsive, about having a temper, about reacting instead of waiting and seeing what else is going on. But as you look at his writings, as you look at the life of Peter through the rest of the New Testament, you'll see how things changed. And that gives me hope that even those things that I'm still working on, not that I'm working on, but that God is still growing and working on in me, that I've still got potential. And I've still, can get over some of these hurdles in my life. And I look back and I can see how the Lord has brought me so far, but yet I have so far to go. But let's start in verse number 22. And it says, "And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them," see, there's that word, "saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water." He's like asking for something impossible, but Jesus has already done something impossible. If you look at the previous verses of when he sent the multitude away, he just fed 5,000, and that was just the men. That wasn't the women. That wasn't the children. That was more than 5,000 that he just fed, and he sent the multitude away. He needed to recoup. He needed to go pray. He sent the disciples on. He needed to be alone with the Lord. And that's not what today's focus is, but you really, and you and I, we have to take time to be alone with the Lord. We have to set ourselves time apart from everybody else, from all other distractions. That's why that we talk about a prayer closet, because sometimes you have to even go get in a closet where nobody even know where you're at. I used to go to the prayer chapel. I have actually went and got in Todd's closet. I got a big closet. I have a little small closet, but his is a decent size. It's not huge, but it's decent. Big enough for me to get in and just take a moment to be by myself. I've literally had to do that before. I've done it in my car. I went out to my car to have some alone time. I went out and sat in my swing to have some alone time. I've gotten up early in the morning. I get up early in the morning so that I can have some time with the Lord before the granddaughter or other granddaughters, before people start coming in and out and going in and out of the house, which I love. But I have to set aside that time. Anyway, that's not what today's devotion's about. Just a little tidbit there. But the wind was contrary, verse number 25. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. So I want you to pay attention. They were scared to death. Verse number 26. They were terrified. They were worn out. It was the middle of the night. They had been rowing because the wind is going against them. So they're rowing and they are getting nowhere. and they have to keep rowing because they're just going to be, sent somewhere they don't want to be. So they're tired, and now we see that, here they see Jesus walking, but they don't really, this is walking on the water. This is impossible. And so they're scared. But straightway Jesus spake unto them. When they heard his voice, man, everything changed when they heard his voice. Now, there was still probably some that were like, are you sure that's the Lord? Are we imagining this? Because we're really tired. We're really give out. We've been up all night when we're really tired. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer. It is not I. Be not afraid. Jesus knew they were afraid. Jesus knew that this was something that was going to blow their mind, that they were not going to be able to understand or comprehend. And he knew they were afraid. He knew they were going to be afraid when he approached them this way. But he is telling them, don't be afraid. He's saying, I know this is scary, but I don't want you to be afraid. There's going to be lots of situations that you and I are in, and they are going to be scary. They are going to be terrifying. They are going to be upsetting. And the Lord, over and over and over again in the scripture, tells us to not be afraid. Cling to him. Yes, cling to him, but don't be afraid. Keep our eyes on him. Yes, but don't be afraid. Verse 28, this is where Peter makes a request. He makes a request, verse 28. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, see, there was still a little bit of doubt. Lord, if it's really you, Lord, is it, we hear your voice, we recognize the shepherd, but is it really you? This is blowing our mind. We're really tired. We've really been fighting all night against this wind. And if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. He asked a huge, impossible request. And he said, come. Jesus said, come. He said, come on. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, now Peter asked an impossible question. The Lord said, come. But then it was on Peter's end to actually get out of the boat. And that is scarier sometimes than making the request that seems so impossible. Is actually the Lord answering our prayer the way we ask it, and then we have to step out by faith and actually exercise that faith and do it. And Peter did it. So there's a lot to be said about Peter. He did it. Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. He was watching. He heard that voice. He was paying attention to that Jesus walking out on the water. He responded to the come, and he was like, I'm coming. And he steps out of the boat and he starts walking on the water, and it says to go to Jesus. So his eyes were fixated on Jesus, but there's a but there. Look at verse number 30. But when he saw the wind boisterous, but he starts looking around at what he's doing, and he starts seeing these waves that are crashing, this wind that is just being so violent, and he took his eyes off Jesus. Then it says he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, so Jesus and Peter, they come walking, they're back on the ship, the wind ceased. Everything was calm. I want you to notice that when I first read this, I was thinking about how I, from learning about Peter, knew it was real easy for Peter to, ask those impossible things. He's done that on the Mount of Transfiguration. Lord, we could just stay here. He just wanted to stay here. And, he said so many things that were just the first thing that come to his mind. And this may just be the first thing that popped into his mind. Lord, let me come to you. You're walking on the water. Let me come to you. And then Jesus said, come. And he's just, boom, he's out of the boat. and he's coming. But then, as always, there's obstacles, there's distractions, there's things that, that we look around, and then when we realize it, we get scared. So even Peter, and he was brave. He was very brave. He asked a very brave question, and he did a very, very, very brave thing. He braved to get out of the boat. He got out of the boat. He started sinking, but he got out of the boat, and none of the rest of them tried to get out of the boat. But Peter got out of the boat. What the problem was is what you see Jesus reprimand him for is not asking an impossible question. You cannot pray an impossible prayer and the Lord he's not going to reprimand you and I for that. Now, it may be something out of his will and he says no. It may be something that's going to harm you and he says no. It may be something that he says yes, but you need to wait a little while. Wait on my timing. But here immediately Peter's request was answered, and immediately Peter is steady getting out of that boat and coming to Jesus. And he's not reprimanded for asking. He's not reprimanded for doing it. What is he reprimanded for? He says, "O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt?" He's like, why did you get scared and start to sink? Why did you take your eyes off of me? Don't look at those boisterous winds as if they're something you should be afraid of, because Jesus was giving him that ability. Jesus was the one that was looking after him and taking care of him, and those winds were not a problem for Jesus. No matter how big and boisterous that they were and violent. But when we look around at our circumstances, and if we look at our circumstances, sometimes we forget that they're big to us, but they're not big to him. And that's what he got reprimanded for. He's like, I don't want you to be afraid of the wind. I don't want you to be afraid of all these circumstances. I don't want you to be afraid when you are surrounded by a storm. Jesus says, I want you to have faith that even in the midst of the storm, that as long as you've got your eyes on me, you are perfectly safe. So that's what Peter got reprimanded for. So when we are asking for that word from the Lord, and even asking for something that is completely impossible, don't be surprised when he says come, when he says yes, when he says okay. And don't be surprised when there's some boisterous winds that are gonna kick up, and they're gonna try to be a distraction. They're gonna try to the storm is gonna try to rage around you and try to get you to be afraid. But Jesus says, don't doubt. Don't doubt. Just have faith in him, not in yourself, and definitely not in the circumstances and not in the storm. No matter how violent, no matter how crazy, no matter how boisterous the wind gets, as long as we keep our eyes on Jesus, he's saying that you're going to be okay. So we need that word. We need that word. And then when we get that word, and it may be something hard, it may be something difficult, it may be something that comes with some obstacles, comes with some distractions, as most things in life do, and most things in life will. We keep our eyes on him and him alone. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.